From a defabricated garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA, this is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, how to add more balletic grace to your restroom stall trowel drop. And now, the podcast host who already has the most graceful trowel drop this side of the Atlantic, Pete Dominic!
Thank you, Pico. As always, I appreciate that. I'm not sure exactly what that meant, but I guarantee you are right about me as always. Trow drop. What a way to kick off the week. Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. I've got two excellent guests joining me on today's program, both Maura Quint, Maura Mondays, usually joining me, and for the first time ever, an old friend of mine, comedian Lenny Marcus, joins me to talk about his new podcast with Saturday Night Live alumni and superstar comedian Leslie Jones. We had a great conversation, both my guests, and I think you're going to love them. As a matter of fact, I know you're going to love them. How was your weekend? Did you knock it out of the park? What'd you do? Did you relax? Did you do stuff? Did you eat things? Did you watch things? Did you watch football or work on a project? Socialize with friends? Did you get some exercise in? I don't know what you did. I'll tell you what I did. I built shelving in my garage for 8 hours on Saturday and like almost 12 hours on Sunday. Got up early on Sunday, went and got lumber and finished the project just before dinner. And man, do I feel satisfied. And apparently, I don't want to brag, but I reached my standing goal for the week. That's right. My Apple Watch told me that I'd reached my standing goal for the week, which is a really humiliating way of saying that I didn't exercise enough, but at least I was standing enough, which is not a thing. You don't need to. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be encouraged to be standing so much. It's preposterous. But I got a lot done, and I feel real good about it. Before you know it, I'm going to have my own big boy bed. Very exciting. Well, this week, folks, kicks off the UN General Assembly. It's a big week in New York. The UN General Assembly, world leaders from all over the world will return from the Queen's funeral, apparently, and come to New York. You'll be hearing speeches and new policy announcements and agreements hopefully made. Also, in conjunction, it's Climate Week in New York City, and the Global Citizen Festival concert takes place this Saturday. So a lot happening in New York around the UN General Assembly. I'll be paying attention to that. Going to be in the city myself on Tuesday to work with this organization called Save the Humans, which is an interesting sustainability initiative. And I'll be performing with Ophira Eisenberg and others on Tuesday afternoon. If you want to come, email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. I think the show is around noon on Tuesday in New York City, in the Chelsea neighborhood. Check out savethehumans.org for more on that. All right, just a couple of clips, and then we'll get to my conversation with Maura Quint. First of all, I get so frustrated with the conversation about immigration. You all heard about what happened over the weekend when stupid governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, flew migrants who were seeking asylum or even had gained, I guess, entry into the country. These weren't undocumented people, and he picked them up in a plane, and he flew them to Martha's Vineyard. He flew them to the vice president, dropped him off in front of the vice president's house. A political ploy, a naked political stunt using human beings. Most decent people were disgusted by it, but unfortunately, a lot in corporate media and media in general still calling this kind of a both sides issue. First of all, one take is that this is fraud, what the governor did. What both these governors from Texas and Florida are doing. Steve Bennett at Mad Owl Blog, who is always brilliant, writes, what these stories appear to describe is something resembling fraud. If accurate, these accounts describe a situation in which desperate migrants were lured onto an airplane under false pretenses, not to help them, but rather to exploit them. They were then dumped into a small community different from the destination they were promised, all as part of a scheme to allow a politician to smirk at a press conference the next day. If there's a moral defense for such cruelty, I can't think of it. But that's not the only dimension of note. Indeed, there's no shortage of questions. Were the migrants in Florida? Who knew this was happening? Was this legal under federal law? Was it legal under state law? Did Ron DeSantis hope to prove that a liberal New England enclave hates immigrants as much as far-right Republicans? He failed spectacularly spectacularly, if that's the case. Was all this captured on camera? By some unconfirmed accounts, there was a videographer with the migrants, perhaps to be used in future campaign advertising. If the matter comes under investigation, that footage will become highly relevant. There's no reason to think this will be a one-day story. That's Steve Bennett writing, of course, on Friday. And it was a story all weekend long. And the Sunday shows picked up on that. And some of them reported on Donald Trump's bizarre 103-minute speech in Ohio. Did you hear anything about that? I'm not going to play it. But Anthea Butler, the professor and author, writes, let me just say a couple things about the Trump rally a lot of folks are missing. Yeah, it's creepy and weird, but take it all with the other rallies going on. The Reawaken American tour with General Flynn, the Charlie Kirk revivals in Arizona with Republican candidates. You have a major faction of the Republican Party morphing into Republican religion. Yeah, it's fascism, but it is bringing elements of conspiracy theory, QAnon, alongside evangelical Christianity to blend into a movement with charismatic figures who people can latch onto and imagine themselves part of the end times and saving the nation. She writes, one of the most dangerous things about all of this is that it empowers regular people to believe they are special, part of a movement that can change the world morally. We don't talk about the effective part of how feelings of belonging make for a powerful motivators religiously. These rallies, especially the Trump ones, have effectively blended religious fervor, calls for violence, and patriotism into a nauseous stew. Add in ways in which Republicans have called Democrats demons, demonic, etc. You can see where all of this is going. And she writes on. That's at Anthea Butler. I thought that was an interesting take on what is happening with the MAGA movement, the Trump movement, the Republican Party. But getting back to this issue of what some people are calling human trafficking that the governor of Florida engaged in over the weekend, I'll leave it to Mehdi Hassan to explain it to us on his show on MSNBC last night.
If you thought the era of Republicans using and abusing migrant children as political pawns ended in 2017 as Donald Trump's cruel and disgusting child separation border policy was exposed to the world, well, you'd be sadly mistaken. I want you to take a long, hard look at this newborn baby, this infant, who, along with some 50 other mainly Venezuelan asylum seekers, was shipped by proud Christian, fierce Bible lover, noted family man Greg Abbott, Texas governor, to the doorstep of Vice President Kamala Harris's D.C. residence early yesterday. A baby. Who uses a baby to score partisan points? The Texas governor's move was just the latest development in a vile game of political one-upmanship taking place within the GOP, as B-list Trump wannabes duke it out and brag to Fox and the base that they are more than racist enough to be the party's new standard bearer. I imagine in the past you've likely heard the line, "What would Jesus do?" from some on the Christian right. Now, I may be Muslim, but I feel I can rather confidently tell you that Jesus, he wouldn't be doing this. He wouldn't be spending millions upon millions of taxpayer dollars for no other reason than to own the libs. He wouldn't be playing a glorified game of hot potato with babies, literal babies. And again, I must reiterate, this isn't just one Republican governor going rogue. No. Apparently, flinging unwanted brown people across the country is now the bigotry du jour for aspiring GOP 2024 presidential candidates. Seeking to outshine proud Christian, fierce Bible lover, noted family man Greg Abbott this week was proud Christian, fierce Bible lover, noted family man Ron DeSantis, who dipped into his state's $12 million anti-immigration fund to relocate not asylum seekers from his own state, but asylum seekers from 1,000 miles away in Texas and relocate them to the remote island enclave of Martha's Vineyard. And I really should correct myself, because he didn't relocate them. He effectively kidnapped these people, luring them onto planes with promises of jobs and expedited visas and free housing in Boston. And then he proceeded to send them to a tiny island with no support services and no warning to the people there. If that's not what most people would call kidnapping, if that's not what a lot of people would call human trafficking, I don't know what is. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic, consider these comments from Rachel Self, a top immigration and criminal defense attorney and a regular legal analyst for Fox, of all places.
They were lied to again and again and fraudulently induced to board the planes. They were told there was a surprise present for them and that there would be jobs and housing awaiting for them when they arrived. This was obviously a sadistic lie.
Sadistic indeed. But if that immigration lawyer's outrage isn't enough to move you, listen to this back and forth from Tweedledee and Tweedle. Just watch.
Let's say I went down to the border and I brought a big truck with me and I picked up a bunch of illegal immigrants and I started transporting them across the country. Would I or would I not likely be arrested for human trafficking, and would it be illegal to do that for me if I did that?
For you, a citizen, you could easily be arrested.
So, illegality from the horse's mouth. They're not saying the quiet part out loud, folks. They're bellowing it. Now, here's the thing. We can get as worked up about this as we want. We can pound our fists and fire off some all-caps tweets and, I don't know, sing America the Beautiful in front of the Supreme Court like House Democrats did after Roe was overturned. In other words, we can do absolutely nothing, or this Democratic administration and this Democratic Congress can open investigations, hold hearings, see if there is a legal criminal case to be made against the likes of Ron DeSantis. Because otherwise, as the midterms approach, we'll continue to see brown families, brown children, brown babies hurled across the country like political footballs. What's that saying? Oh, yeah. The cruelty is the point.
Yeah, I was hearing that all weekend. The cruelty is the point. The thing that pisses me off is the stupid question that Chuck Todd asked the vice president last weekend on Meet the Press when he said, is the border secure? And she hemmed and hawed and she tried to give a nuanced answer because she has to, because it's a stupid question. He has the right and should be asking the question, is the border secure? But not like that. I mean, it's just like saying, asking the principal, is the school secure? Yeah, I mean, listen, it's as secure as we can make it, okay? The doors are locked. We've got guards. They're armed. We've got laser matrices. We've got cameras everywhere. We built a moat and filled it with alligators. There's a giant picture of Mike Lindell out front to scare potentially bad folks away. But could someone get in and slaughter? It could happen. It could happen. And then you'd come back to me and say, I thought you said it was secure. Listen, nothing is 100% secure. It's just a gotcha question, and I really don't like it, and it's been getting a lot of play. The problem, of course, is that we need new laws. It's the legislative branch, not the executive branch. It's the legislative branch whose responsibility this is. And it's Republicans who are to blame. That's why it pisses me off so much when Alex Burns on ABC's This Week said it has been a bipartisan problem for a generation or something like that. Where's the clip? Here it is.
Look, the immigration situation in this country is a generational bipartisan policy failure. But what these governors are doing is not actually putting forward anything that the administration can take seriously.
All right. That's such a huge. I mean, he's got to know that that's not true. I've been covering this. You've heard me talk about this a million times. But you know what? Let's let Senator Dick Durbin explain it, as he did on Meet the Press yesterday.
We put a dramatic investment into our border operations, and President Biden has called for that, and we have supported it on a bipartisan basis. But I want to tell you the bottom line, and it's a cliche about our broken immigration system, is the truth. Unless and until we come together in a bipartisan fashion, in the Senate particularly, and once again entertain a comprehensive immigration bill, we're just inviting trouble. Across my state of Illinois and virtually every other state, there is a desperate need for workers. Our birth rate is not keeping up with our demands for workers, and in every walk of life that you can imagine, we need more people. And there are those who want to serve this country, but we need an orderly process at the border. To do that, we need Congress to do its part on a bipartisan basis. The Republicans complain about the situation, and it needs to be changed dramatically, but they won't engage in helping us reach any kind of solution.
Dick Durbin explains it perfectly well there. But Chuck Todd wasn't done. He still wanted to blame Democrats. And this is what I love, because Dick Durbin said exactly what I've been saying over and over. He was there in the Senate in 2013. President Obama was the president, and he explained exactly what happened.
You know, Senator, I understand your comment about the Republicans here, and I think there's a lot of evidence that many of them would prefer the issue for the ballot box than a solution. But Democrats don't look like they're anxious to do something. You're an exception. You're one of the few people that wants to talk about this issue and try to solve it. But you know, there's a lot of Democrats that would prefer to ignore it and hope that, hey, we'll deal with it maybe at another time. How do you fix that mindset?
There's political danger. Don't get me wrong. But we faced that 8 years ago when we sat down with our gang of 8, with John McCain, myself, and Schumer, and even Senator Graham, and came up with a comprehensive plan that was embraced by business and labor and groups across the board. We passed it in the Senate, Chuck. You'll remember that. 14 Republicans voted for it. 5 of them are still around today. And then sent it over to the House where it died. Unfortunately, the Republican leadership refused to take it up. It can be done. We can make the border safe and have a system of legal entry into the United States to work, put these people on the books, have them pay taxes, make sure we've done a background check. All of these things can be done. Are they controversial? Yeah. You bet. Some of them are very controversial, but we know we need to do it. The United States is a nation of immigrants. I'm proud to be the son of an immigrant who came to this country. But I will tell you, if we're going to do it in this era, we can't wait another 30 years to get around to a solution.
There you go. There you go. Like I said, it takes Congress, it takes legislation to create comprehensive immigration reform, a pathway to citizenship, a work visas, all different kinds of education visas. You've got to keep these folks, the dreamers, here, give them a deal, and stop demonizing the hell out of them. And of course, there'd be billions. There are billions in there for border security. I'd love to hear your take on any of this. What did you see over the weekend? What are you thinking? Those of you who live in the border states, what perspective do I have wrong? Well, that's all I've got for you in the clips. Now it's time to get to my first guests. All right, coming up, I've got comedian Lenny Marcus, who's co-hosting a new podcast with Leslie Jones, which is so good. That conversation is really, really good. I highly recommend you listen to it. If you're interested at all in the entertainment industry, we talk about politics and media. It's very, very good. And we even touch on our friendship. Lenny Marcus, great conversation. But first, I've got Maura Quint. But before that, I want to make sure that I remind you that Indeed.com is a great company if you run your own business, because every single hire counts, and no hiring partner understands that like Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. So don't spend your hours and hours on multiple job sites just looking around for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Huh? How about that? It's all there on Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. And if you hate waiting, and I hate waiting, ooh, do I hate it. Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Indeed does all the hard work for you. So sponsor a job and boom, Instant Match shows you candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job description immediately after you post. With Instant Match, you can start hiring fast. And in this minute that I'm talking to you, 16 hires were made on Indeed, according to their data. And when you sponsor Indeed and Indeed post in the U.S., you're 3 times more likely to get a hire. The right candidate is doing everything they can to find you. And if you use Indeed, you can be sure you're doing everything you can to find them too. Indeed knows that when you're doing everything for your company, you can't afford to overspend on hiring. So visit Indeed.com/standup to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/standup. Indeed.com/standup. Terms and conditions do apply. The cost per application pricing not available for everyone. You need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, there you go. Of course, also sign up for a paid subscription here on the show. Be a part of our community. Join the street team to help promote the show. Go to youtube.com/standupwithpete to watch video clips of the show, which listeners are helping me put up. And let's get to my conversation with Maura, which never fails. She's always hilarious and entertaining and brilliant. Of course, she is the campaign chair of the Americans for TaxFairness.org organization, and she is a writer, contributed to so many different outlets, including The Onion, New Yorker, and so much more. She's hilarious. She's a regular contributor here on Stand Up. I love talking to her, and she's awesome on Twitter. If you're not following her there, you should be. Apparently, she got recognized from social media. How about that? That's weird, but she's that big of a deal. At Behind Your Back on Twitter. Say hello to her there, and let's say hello to her here right now.
On tour, apparently, in terms of going to see live music. You've been in Philly and D.C. You've seen band after band this week.
Yeah, that's all I've been doing, just bouncing around between shows. I'm basically a groupie, I guess, is really what it is.
What kind of shows do you go with people? How do you know where to go?
What is this music thing? How do you do?
I don't leave. Yeah. I don't go to places because there are so many people at these places.
I talk to people a lot and I ask them about what bands they like, and then they tell me what bands they like, and then I look up those bands. It's how that tends to go. But so I had a work event in DC, and a band that some people had told me about, Nation of Language, happened to be playing there that night. So I was kind of like, all right. Cause I had like a DC event, you know, where you like, people wear suits and name tags and they've got the lanyards and stuff, and everyone's like talking policy and, oh, you know, November, here's my strategy, blah, 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 that kind of bullshit. But it was an open bar. So I was there, and in fact, at the end of it, I was told, we haven't made our bar minimum and it's going to be closing soon. Would anyone like to, like, you know, feel free to get the expensive whiskey at this point? And I was like, well, all right. And then I was like, hey, that band's playing nearby, and I just got a bunch of free alcohol. I'm going to go to that show. It's what's going to happen. So that was great. No, I'm very cool.
Do you like going to those events, by the way, the whatever the event was with the lanyards and the name tags? Do you like that kind of thing, or does it give you anxiety and annoyance?
I love them.
Oh, really? Go ahead.
But it's because I don't live in DC, I think. So like, for me, I feel like basically like a cultural tourist, where I get to just sort of like parachute into this weird world and be like, you guys are crazy. You do this all the time. Oh my gosh. They're passing food. What is that? I'll have some of that. Yeah. Great. Like, I'm the person who's just constantly in line at the bar, and that's not like, DC people aren't like that. They biked to this event. They've got to get home in time to like feed their dog. They'll have like a light beer. They're like very that place. Whereas I'm the girl who's like, I'm not from here. Can we do shots? Like, it's, I'm the one at the end of the night going up to like Representative like Pramila Jayapal, just being like, I love you. Like, I'm out of place, but I love it.
That's great. I love to hear that. But the thing gives me a little anxiety at events like those is when they do bring the food around, and I'm having a conversation with someone, and now I've got it, like I'm holding a drink, and now I also have to hold the food in another hand, and it's a skewer, and now it's going to get stuck in my teeth, and I'm talking while I'm eating. It's a lot. There's a lot going on there.
It is a lot. The past food situation, you just have to you just got to like throw those back, basically. Like if it's a skewer, you deep throat that. You just take your teeth, you run it, you throw the skewer aside, you keep going, man. You don't pause. Like there's no time. No cute little nibbles here. It's just like that's sustenance to keep that free bar going.
I think I also feel like a tinge of awkwardness if I turn down a thing in that, and I'm talking to someone, I'm like, no thanks. Not only to the person who's doing the catering, who's also got an audition early in the morning, but I'm like, I don't really like those kind of I look like I'm picky. I look like I'm turning down something good. Like, why wouldn't you eat that? I don't know. I don't like snails on a stick.
Most people don't eat it though. Like most people, see, I feel the opposite, because I don't eat lots of the sort of things that come through, but I tend to feel like I'm the girl being like, wait, what's that? What's that? I like that. All right, give me a couple of those. Yeah. Like I'm like awkwardly like, I'll make a dinner out of that. Sure. That's fine. I don't plan to eat again. This is free.
As a result, at the end of the night, I'm always starving. I'm like, I can't believe I didn't eat more of those finger foods. What was I thinking? It was delicious. I need to start bringing a bag.
Like an attaché case, because you'll look like very important, like you're full of papers and shit. But no, you're just putting it down on the side. Get the ones with pockets, because you need like a part for anything that's saucy. You don't want that mixing with the others, you know? You want to keep these things separate, and then you're ready to go. When they told me there was still like they hadn't met their minimum, I mean, I was definitely the like, can I take a bottle? Like, would that help? If I just like took a whole bottle and walked out of here? They weren't on board with that.
Oh.
But after that, I was just like, could I get a water bottle? And could you just start giving me vodka shots, and I'll just put them in the water bottle and leave with that? But I couldn't find a water bottle. I would have done that though if I had one on hand.
You took both those steps.
I absolutely did.
You're amazing. Yeah. You are amazing. Good for you.
Is that the word we're going for, Pete? I don't know. I think that might be a bit of a stretch.
I think it's fun. And I mean, I'm the one who just suggested I bring a to-go bag and carry it on my shoulder. Pete, why are you wearing a cooler?
I have one of those that goes like right over your shoulder. It's fantastic. Sure. But here's the thing. Those DC events are terrible. Like they're terrible. They're all stuffy. They're all like, very, the LA for ugly people element is true in terms of it's just like, who are you? Who do you know? How can I get something out of you? So if you just have none of that, like if you just completely ignore all of that stuff and you're just like, it's a party, I'm here to get drunk. Like it's so much fun, and they don't know what to do with you. Like they don't even know how to deal with that. So they just are generally a little bit amused. Like So you're kind of like the fun thing, really. It's a good strategy in DC.
Someday, if I meet you in person, I want it to be at one of those events. It's never going to happen, but if it does, I want it to be at one of those events. And then we'll go see.
Let's lanyard hang. Totally. Let's absolutely lanyard hang.
Do you keep the lanyards?
Oh, every lanyard.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I got all my lanyards.
Don't you feel cool? Doesn't it like it just instantly makes you feel it? It makes me feel so cool that the other day I was thinking, what if I just wore a lanyard all the time? Like, what if I just walked around in like
think that's
other places?
I don't think that's cool.
But do you think people would just be like, oh, she must have authority here? Like, could I walk into a Starbucks and then just go back behind the thing and be like, I think I could. I think a lanyard might help.
I think they'd be like, lady forgot to take off her lanyard.
No, in DC they would. But like, I don't live in DC. I feel like in Pennsylvania where it's like lanyards aren't a thing, it would just be like, oh, she must be someone. Like that's formal and official. I feel like I could walk with a lanyard into like a random town in Kansas and just take over their Denny's.
To be honest with you, you've been tweeting about like dating and past relationships and stuff. Like if you want to meet somebody in Pennsylvania, I absolutely think that you should wear a name tag. And I promise you, dudes are going to be like, somebody, Maura forgot to take off her name tag. And
can I tell you, this is like a kind of aside, but this was a big deal for me. So I went to the Wednesday DC show and then I was in Philly for the weekend and I went to multiple shows, including the Afghan Wigs show, which was great. They were fantastic.
The name of a band?
That is... It's not even a new band, Pete, actually. You don't get to like be like, I'm too like, listen, I don't know. This is a band actually of your time. I was like the youngest person in this room, Pete. Like this is not.
If you say so.
Yeah, no, this is a band, But they were like, they're a little bit, they're indie. They're not, they're not super main. They weren't on the radio. They weren't playing at the frat party you were at. I don't know.
That was at a ton of frat parties.
Yeah, that's what I think. I assume you were just frat partying it up. No, So, and I had already been to another concert before the Afghan Wigs concert. And I was out with a friend. And so we were already several drinks in. We sat through an entire concert while drinking already. So we were at that point, we walked into the Afghan Wigs show and someone came over and I didn't even notice. And my friend was like, started talking. She was like, oh, you know her? It was someone recognized me from the internet.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
and like, came up to say very nice things. They were very, very nice. I was a little too out of it to even...
What did they say?
They were talking... Actually, you know what they said? They were saying how much they appreciated the tax work I'd been doing. And how, like, they thanked me for my tax work. It was really nice.
Are you Maura Quint?
Yeah.
I just got to say, your tax work.
My tits have never been more out of my outfit, too. So I don't know if tax work was a euphemism at that time, but, like... It could have been, but the person didn't seem it. They seemed very respectful. It was very nice.
And if by tax work, I mean your breasts. Taxing. They're really...
That's what I call them. Tax and work. No. Sorry.
Terrible. Okay, so you're in DC, you're having fun, and then I guess you come back home to real life, and I've got to ask you about a few things that happened this week, during the week. Anyway, by the way, do you have anything that you just want to rant about? Anything? Anybody? I love when you just rant about anything from a dog to an interaction at a convenience store to someone who called you. One thing that I've been annoyed with lately is that I keep getting emails from very famous politicians or politically adjacent people. And yesterday, I got an email from what's her name from Seinfeld.
Oh, yeah. Was she cared about something, the environment or something? I saw that one going around. Julia Louis-Dreyfus?
Yes, I got an email from Julia. Pete, it's Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And they get me every time. Every single time I'm like, why is she emailing me? Does she want me to?
Okay, so that's terrible because that's just pure your ego, which I love and is wonderful because you're like, of course she would be emailing me. I assume this is official comedy business and she's reaching out because she's doing Seinfeld too. And I love that. But I have a problem because, they sell your lists or whatever. So you start getting things from everywhere. And I keep getting texts and they include his picture every time. It's like, hey, Maura, it's Rob. And it's Rob's picture. And Rob is a politician in Iowa. But here's the problem. He's a politician I know and do text with otherwise.
Oh, God, that's worse. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, hey. Oh, no. No, I don't think that the guy I met and hung out with would be asking me for money. I think this is probably this is a formal thing. Yeah, exactly.
He should also just text you and ask you for money.
It would probably work. at some point I'd just be like, you need some like breakfast pizza? Sure, yeah, go to Casey's. Here's $20. Good luck.
I mean, it is that season where every politician is asking for money. We're like 50 days away from the midterms. I mean, I don't blame them, just to be clear, to be fair, but it's like we're at this point, we're so inundated with emails. And now I think if you've ever given your number out, text messages, and I'm wondering how much or how often people actually give money, simply because they know even if they want to, they probably realize if you give $5 here, you're about to get 7,000 more emails. And I'm not sure if it's working.
Well, it must be to some extent. It's just not working on us, like our demographic of sort of online, where we are in terms of having resources. But I think that like there's a certain demographic of not so online people who are just like, oh, the Democrats really are in trouble. Nancy Pelosi specifically told me so. I want to help. What can I do? I will sell my old tea doilies, and here I'll send them $20 immediately. Like, I think that it does seem to work with a certain demographic. But sorry, I'm very chatty at the moment. But the thing that I have been finding is, I don't know why this is, but somehow my number has been sold with my dad and my brother's name attached to it. And my dad in particular, my brother less so, but my dad in particular, he was a Republican his whole life until Trump, basically. And now I think he just feels homeless. I don't think he would even say he's a Democrat. He just doesn't like Trump and he doesn't like those guys. But so the Republicans, they have his information. They're coming at him constantly, but I'm now getting the texts. So I'm getting the like, hey, Mike. And so I'm getting both of them at the same time. Like Nancy Pelosi's hitting me up and Herschel Walker's hitting my dad up. And it's fascinating to see like instantly as my phone's going off. I mean, the most fascinating thing is, right, I'm not getting any text from anyone I know, but my phone is buzzing a lot and it's just these people. And the Dems are very like, we're getting outmatched and we're down in the dumps and we need help. It's very like, we're drowning. Please lend us a hand. It's like appeals for empathy and like, oh gosh, you wouldn't want us to just like, I'm surprised I haven't gotten a text yet from the Democrats that's just like, this dog is in pain. And the only thing that makes him feel better is knowing that the Democratic Party is fully funded. Like it's that kind of like
a dog with big what?
With giant eyes that's just staring at you, just sort of like, oh, and just like, oh, this dog we have to pay the guy to stop beating the dog. Please spare this poor dog. They're that kind of appeals.
I actually got an email from Jamie Raskin that said, Pete, please help or your dog will die, which I thought was really
that's just Jamie.
Desperate.
That's just Jamie. That's just how he is. Yeah. I don't think that was part of their strategy. He just literally has your dog, Pete. Watch out.
That's just Jamie.
That's just Jamie. No, but the Republicans are like, the texts that I see that they're sending are fucking psycho. They're like, so, the Democrats have this sort of like appeal to like, please stop the bad man from hurting us. Please help us. The Republicans are just like, Democrats are going to show up at your house right now with guns. Yeah. They're like strapped to the gills. In fact, there's a drone. Do you see a light in your house anywhere? That light is coming from a laser beam that is coming from the devil, evil, because the devil is actually like, it's just pure, like, it's like terror. It's absolute terror. Like I've seen horror films that were less like psychologically damaging than these texts.
And it works. It works for them.
Oh,
I mean, I was joking about email me now or your dog will die, but they actually do that. Like they're so desperate that they'll tell you anything's going to happen if you don't do this, or if you do this, this is going to happen. I mean, speaking of conservatives, you were tweeting about the great Dennis Prager, and here's a minute from his radio show, and you could tell me to hit stop anytime, but here it is.
Where is my favorite song?
Oh God, stop! Sorry.
Oh, too early. He can't find his notes. This is my favorite part. He can't find his.
I just hate him.
Yeah, I love it.
No, that's not it. Damn, I threw it away.
Oh, he can't find it.
That schoolroom sign that I saw in the New York Times. The world is better because you are in it.
Now, before he talks about that, what do you like? What do you think about that message sitting in a school?
It's a lovely message, of course.
All right, let's listen to him.
I don't know what grade it was. I assume something like 5th grade. What a stupid message.
He does not like it.
No.
Plus, it's not true. What has any fifth grader done to have made the world better because he or she is in it?
I love it so much. I love how much they hate children. I like the party that's just like, we've got to protect the children. Oh, what the fuck have they ever done for us? Like, it's so hilarious to me. It's amazing. I absolutely love it.
You tweeted, you said, fair enough. I can understand why someone who makes the world worse every single day by being in it would be confused.
I mean, it must be very, very strange for him.
I wasn't sure about that for a second. I'm like, I do subscribe to this idea that if you tell your kids they're so special and constantly, I mean, there could be some issues with that or something, but what a ridiculous thing that this is different. And one of the comments on it was, what about like the fifth grader who takes care of his special needs sibling or even parent? Like, that kid is every day making the world a better place. I love that comment.
My kids at all ages have made my life better, which makes the world better. Because, I mean, if I did not have children, I would be such a fucking full-on nihilist. Like, I would just be like, well, fuck it, let the world burn. Like, I would be doing so many drugs in, like, so many alleyways, because who the fuck cares? I can't save this shit. Like, you're all on your fucking own. But I had kids, and so it's like, oh, god damn it. They need a fucking inhabitable world. Now I guess I got to deal with that shit too. Like, that's the only reason I do any of this stuff. It's because I feel guilty, basically.
Well, you want to make the world a better place for your kids.
Yeah, but I think what's hilarious is, like, Dennis Berger is so completely anti the entire concept of children having any self-esteem, which makes sense because that's the only way he's going to get new listeners and followers. Like, if people have self-esteem, they're like, well, this guy sucks. Like, I know enough about humanity that obviously this person is a terrible person and I want nothing to do with them. But if you just keep beating them down and you're just like, you're a worthless worm, like, and you just keep with that messaging, eventually they'll be like, thank you, daddy. Thank you. Yes. What else can you teach me? That's it. That's all he's got. Like, that's how he has to bring about more people to purchase his stupid products.
He's I like his voice, though. I like the tone of his voice. He's like one of those radio guys also, like Rush Limbaugh used to do, takes these long pauses. Here we go.
Boy, again, as I pointed out, it's the opposite of the way many of us were raised.
It's the opposite of the way many of us were raised? How was he raised? The world is a better place because you're in it. But you were told the opposite of that? The world is a shitty place because you're in it? I don't understand.
Every single day, this place goes to fucking hell.
All right, I'm done with that dirtbag. Okay, so also, with the big story over the past few days has been that Republican governors now, the governor of Texas has been doing this for a while, but now Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, has said, I like that what the Texas governor is doing. He's taking people that come across the border, putting them on planes, buses, whatever, and shipping them to either, quote, sanctuary cities or strategically to even as specific as dropping them off in front of the vice president's home, Kamala Harris's home, or over the weekend, of course, they brought them to Martha's Vineyard, which has been a very interesting situation because the people of Martha's Vineyard took care of them. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Some people are even referring to it as human trafficking. Maura, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts about this.
Me? What? Why would you think I would have thoughts? That seems so strange. It's just a complete void in my head here, Pete. Yeah, it is human trafficking. If you are not honest about what you're doing and you just try to scoop people up and then force them into a place they've never wanted to go. Yeah, no, that's the sort of thing that we generally consider illegal. And in fact, the right loves to scream about. So yeah, that's bad right there. It's also, I mean, like, they're trying to sell a narrative so thoroughly that is utter nonsense because they're the sort of motivating overall statement that they're trying to make is like, oh, see, you would hate it too if you had to deal with this, blue states, but it's only us. We red states have to suck this all up. As though you look at cities like New York and Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles and say, yeah, sure, no immigrants there. I mean, these are majority foreign-born cities for the most part, or at least, equal. They're massively foreign-born cities, and they pretend as though this is not something that the blue areas ever deal with, when in fact, blue areas deal with it constantly. It's been an ongoing thing for much longer than the red states have really been bothering with it at all. So they're just really trying to sell this narrative. And what I hate is when I see that narrative gets taken up by the media, which of course it always does. It's
how would you frame the narrative that you're hearing from the media?
I'm trying not to pay too much attention to it, but I've certainly seen that sort of thing. And obviously there's, the right has such a thorough control of so many of our media structures that there's plenty of the sort of like, see, this blue state, they kicked him out or whatever, as opposed to they got them services and got them to places where they actually wanted to be. But it's just a massive stunt. It's just the fact that they don't at any point recognize that they're doing a massive stunt with human lives is incredibly upsetting.
It is a really upsetting thing to see in most ways, but at the same time, I feel like heartened to see the way that they're being treated in certain places as well. And they're certainly not being treated like invaders. I don't know how folks see this. People get so animated and anti-immigration. I've just never, ever, ever even felt an inkling of that when I assume someone is here undocumented. I always think immediately, oh my God, I bet you that person had a tough journey, or I bet that person's had a tough life. Like, I'm making those assumptions and they might not be appropriate, but it's just generally all I feel. I don't fear them hurting me, and I don't at all, or taking my job or any of those things. I've never really understood that. Maybe because I don't live in a town where they're everywhere all the time or something, or I'm competing with them or something. I don't know. It's so gross to me.
There's like 5 Venezuelans right out your side of your door, and they are just about to do a podcast so much better than you. Like, it's just going to be gone.
Julio,
it's done for. It's done for. It's an absurd statement, and it's a ridiculous fear, and it's certainly a ridiculous sort of thing coming from people who have staked their entire identity on America is the greatest country in the world. This is we want to do what the founders wanted, and we just believe so much in the strength of this nation, which that's the whole thing, man. Like, immigration is pretty much the whole deal. The whole point of what our country is here for was so that people could come here and not be under oppressive rule that they were fleeing other countries from. That's it. So if your whole thing is red, white, and blue, and I'm going to wear a flag on my crotch as like a little mankini thing, then maybe this is not the issue that you should necessarily be waving around like you think that it is somehow in tune with. But I mean, of course, that would be, I'm trying to appeal to some sort of hypocritical thought, as though hypocrisy still exists for them, which it's such a,
there's no nuance in the immigration issue, and people just don't realize the fact that it's not about securing the border. It's about, you have to create pathways that used to exist, and you have to have comprehensive immigration reform that we almost had, but Republicans stand in the way from it. You know all about special interests, Maura, in terms of being a tax policy activist. But the interesting thing about immigration is there really aren't any special interests against comprehensive immigration reform, because every company, every industry wants that cheap labor. And any economist right now will tell you that we have a shortage right now of people who are willing to do certain jobs, and those are the folks who would do it. So we need to create a structure and a pathway for them. But Republicans will not allow for that legislation to pass. Then they just complain about why these people keep coming. They're the reason. They won't pass laws and create pathways the way there used to be for immigrants, probably our age and older.
I think saying that there is not a special interest against it is, I understand why you're saying that, and I'm not saying you're wrong per se, but I would point to simply the way in which Republicans and conservatives choose to secure and hold power, which is, as I was saying through the text, is through fear. And you have to have an other to fear. And immigrants are it's a first they came for, then, it's that whole quote being played out. Immigrants are the easiest place to start othering and say, they're literally not from here. They are therefore other, and therefore scary, and therefore bad. And once you can start convincing people to really dive in and hold that as a truth, you can start expanding it out. And you know who else is other? people who don't have the same religion and these people with a different skin tone and the ladies and the, like, whatever. You can keep broadening that circle, but immigration is, fundamental. If they switched on that, their whole structure starts to crumble. So they need to maintain that terror.
It's fully a way to get clicks for your media outlet or votes for your campaign. I'm just saying there's not a huge industry. It's even like churches and houses of worship, religious people. Historically, of course, Christian organizations have resettled refugees, which are not necessarily immigrants, but it's just there just isn't some big moneyed interest. But that doesn't mean Republicans don't stand in the way of it because of what I just said about votes and clicks with your media is what I meant by that. I mean,
well, I will also say, because I'm just in the mood to contradict you at every turn, and this is not my issue, so I don't necessarily know that I have like the key talking points. So maybe I'm wrong on this, but to me, you said refugees, which is not necessarily the same as immigrants. I think it is very much.
How dare you?
We have all types of refugees. And so we have, different classifications in terms of law, in terms of refugees. But a large portion of immigrants coming here are coming because they are fleeing something, because there is it doesn't always mean that there is a war in the sort of traditional two powers clashing and firing bullets kind of sense. There's climate refugees, right? Where a person
Central
lives
America.
is no longer
you're right. You're right.
habitable.
I like when, but this immigration lawyer who you may have seen the video of her referred to them in Martha's Vineyard, referred to them as migrants, which, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's somewhere between refugee and immigrant. But you're right. You're absolutely right about people fleeing any number of, from violence to the fact that their soil is not arable anymore in certain Central American countries because of climate change. You make good points, of course. You mentioned women being othered. And I want to ask you, speaking of a person who others them a lot, Lindsey Graham this week.
I thought you meant you, but okay, yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm constantly othering women.
You and Lindsey Graham, I know the two of you hang out at the frat parties that you go to.
One of the phrases I use to other women is I often will say, these people.
That's nice. At least you're calling women people. That's still a step above most of
I just hope that people know I'm referring to an entire gender.
Sure. Yeah.
These people who identify as women. How about them with their uteruses? So is there a plural of uterus?
I mean, uteri, I suppose, but I don't know.
I don't know why you'd ever use it. But the bottom line is, Lindsey Graham came out this week and said, national, ban abortion, just like Europe, and it's going to be national. Now, in case people haven't been paying attention, Roe v. Wade was overturned, the Dobbs decision meant it went back to the states. So each state can decide. So now we have these laboratories of democracy decide on women's bodies. And Lindsey Graham, who supported that, of course, and generally speaking, Republicans support states' rights or whatever, except when they don't, which is also often. He said, no, national. I want it national, with like 5 weeks left. And even stupid Jesse Waters on Fox News was like, bad timing, Lindsey, bad timing, buddy. So it was bad timing. And I saw a comic strip that, had Republican holding up a sign saying ban abortions. And next to it, it was a Democrat, I think it was like an elephant and donkey, at a line for voter registration saying, hold that sign a little higher because it's working for us. What are your thoughts on the announcement this week by Lindsey Graham and how it's being responded to by Democrats and women's rights activists?
I mean, look, in terms of the
where
sort
are
of
you on a national ban for abortion also?
Oh, I'm for it. Absolutely. I mean, basically, country? Look, Pete, my fundamental belief is that only wealthy people should be allowed to have any basic rights. So if you can't, buy your own abortion doctor or go to one of those other countries, then too bad for you. You shouldn't be having sex. Yeah, no, that's
What do you say? No, but seriously, hold on a second. 1 second. When people do say, be more responsible. If you don't want to get pregnant, don't have sex. They're almost always referring to like younger people or lower income people. What do you say to someone who says, be more responsible and don't have sex if you don't want an unwanted pregnancy?
I mean, mostly just that I wish your parents had been more responsible because obviously you shouldn't be here, but yet here we're stuck with you on this fucking planet. So maybe you can shut your fucking mouth. All right. Maybe that's not the best response. Maybe that's okay.
Like that's a good one. Okay. That's fine.
Okay.
All right, but back to the national ban. I mean, it was a gift in a way to Democrats and progressives, I think. I don't know what Lindsey Graham is thinking other than what people in South Carolina think.
Well, it is, and I get really nervous when we get into the whole election race element because there is always the question of timing. When things hit, will they really have an impact? Are people really going to... we're in the beginning of September. We're talking about an election in November. How long are people going to be motivated and all that sort of stuff? So, yeah, sure. There's certainly a bump, I think, to people saying, well, fuck that. But I don't know if that holds. But I also, I think that there is an element on the right. You've seen those maps. I'm sure most people have seen those maps. Like if we just had a straight democracy, we'd basically just be a Democrat country. There are more people who believe in the philosophies and the laws being put forth on the left than there are people who believe in the ideas of the right. They're just from a sheer numbers perspective. But the right is able to maintain power because of the ways in which they have gerrymandered districts. They've been able to create these pockets. They've been able to disenfranchise and completely eliminate voters from swaths of areas. So they're using all of these tactics and techniques. So yes, I think it is very animating to have people say, I think we should have abortion as a legal right, and I don't want the other side to do it. But I think Republicans recognize that it's just not a one-to-one question. They don't have to say, hey, we think that half the country agrees with us. They know half the country doesn't agree with them. That doesn't matter. What they need is to make sure that these little fiefdoms they have created, these pockets that they hold so strongly, that the people that they know believe their crazy stuff comes out. So I think animating their base is fundamental to their election strategy right now, because all they have to do is, keep things going on the little train that they have rigged to head one way. So I don't necessarily go, oh yeah, great, now everybody's going to come and vote Democrat. A lot of the people who weren't or couldn't, still can't, or are put in places where their votes, become really unimportant to these particular races. And the Republicans have done a great job in just sort of making sure that all they need to do is just keep pissing off their base.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's enough. I mean, who knows?
Oh, I hope it's not.
Right.
It's certainly not as strong as they were counting on it being, but I would not necessarily at this point in time tilt to be like, it's over for those bitches. I wouldn't be at that place either. I think Democrats are still right to be very nervous about the midterms.
Absolutely right. I completely agree with that. Finally, the Queen is still dead. And last week, you had a lot of funny things to say about that. And I'm wondering if you paid any attention to any of it this week. And F, Marry, Kill, Charles, Harry, William.
Harry is the one who lives here now? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not maybe the biggest royalist. Okay. And then William is his bald, adultering brother.
Is he adultering?
Oh, that's what I've heard.
My daughter said he is ugly about William. I was like, oh, really? I think he's a good looking guy. But anyway, go ahead.
I think he's less attractive because of everything I've heard about him, which is that he's an asshole. He's supposedly, and what the fuck do I know? Suddenly I'm like the British tabloid. No, I've got the inside scoop here, Pete. He's I have no clue. But the tiny little bit that I've read, he's supposedly like the Charles Jr., he's following in the same footsteps as his dad, and he messes around on Kate and is not a great guy. And so off with his head and off with the other guy's head. And Harry seems nice. On a rumor
that he cheated, you're chopping his head off. Is that right?
Oh, the royals haven't been killing themselves over rumors for fucking centuries, man. I'm just trying to honor their tradition. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you didn't do the F, Marry, Kill.
Oh, well, yeah, I was killing two of them. I can't do that. All right, fine.
You have to F one, marry one, and kill one.
Okay, fine. Well, look, Harry's obviously the good guy. Wow, this is really hard. But so therefore, Harry can get a blowjob or sex or whatever. That's fine. That's a one and done, and that's over with. But the other two, I don't care. Because you kill one and then the other you marry, but then they mysteriously disappear. So it's the same thing to me, right? Oh, no, I don't know.
It's almost as if you've answered this specific question before. You really?
Oh, we took a boat for our honeymoon, and then I don't know what happened, but I woke up in the morning and he wasn't on the boat anymore. You should probably drag the sea.
A boat?
Am I going to push him off the boat?
Again, it seems as if you've thought about murdering a royal before. And if you were going to murder a royal, granted I didn't give him as a choice, how about that Andrew who hung out with the Jeff Epstein and he's out there marching with medals on his chest? If he was one of, survivors or victims of his sexual assault, they can't be loving that.
No, they can't. I think
look
that
at
is
that guy. That's
put.
the guy who assaulted me when I was 14 on Epstein's Island, and now he's marching around with medals and shit.
No, it's pretty incredible that he's been permitted to live. But, I don't know, like the patriarchy is very strong. And then you mix that in with some royal obsession. Yeah, I'm sure that guy could do anything. He could probably dig up his queen mom, fuck the corpse, and then continue with the whole procession, I think.
Ken Starr or Bill Clinton? Who do you prefer?
For what? For death? I don't know. Like you're giving me so many options.
We're not
on a murder train. Okay.
I just saw Clinton. Like apparently he threw some shade at Ken Starr who died this week, and I'm just kind of like Clinton. I don't think he's better than Ken Starr per se. He's kind of a dirtbag, a lot of a dirtbag himself. So
there's so much nuance to the word "better" there. I wouldn't even know where to begin. Ken. Look, I shed no tears for the passing of Mr. Starr, and I probably am not going to shed a lot when Mr. Clinton follows suit. So,
it's nice that you called them Mr. I think that's polite.
Yeah. Well, I was just trying to distance myself from them. Frankly, it wasn't respect. It was just sort of like, you stand over there. We're not friends.
Another amazing conversation with you. I love talking to you. This was so much fun. Thank you so much, Maura. Have an awesome week.
Thank you. You too.
All right, there you go, Maura Quint. Everybody at Behind Your Back on Twitter. Don't forget to thank her for joining me. AmericansForTaxFairness.org. Support them there. And now it's time to get to my second guest on today's show. He's a stand-up comedian who I began in the business with in New York City in the late 90s. He's gone on to appear on the David Letterman Show, of course, the Tonight Show, and so much more. And now he is working with Leslie Jones on so many different projects, writing and contributing, and as well as co-hosting her new podcast, which I listened to 3 episodes of and really enjoyed it. It's called The Fuckery. That's right, at FCKRY Podcast. Fuckery Podcast. And Lenny is on Twitter at Lenny Marcus NYC. Of course, Leslie Jones is a Les Dog with 2 G's. They drop new episodes every week, and I just love talking to Lenny. We covered a lot of ground here on the show, and it was really interesting. I enjoyed this conversation a lot. I think you will too. And if you do, please let Lenny know that you did and check out The Fuckery, their podcast. And here we go. Oh my God, there he is, my old friend, one of my all-time favorites, and I do mean that. Lenny Marcus, thank you for joining me, and congratulations on this very exciting new project, podcasting with Leslie Jones, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. You listen, and I just want to make sure you understand this as well. For you, anything you want.
Well, I was thinking about Lenny Marcus a lot, and I was thinking, number one, I think I started comedy in New York pretty close around the same time as you, as I did anybody, number one. And number two, I've always liked you, always admired you, always thought you were funny, and don't think I ever had any issue with you. But I do like to, 20 years into our career, was I ever an asshole to Lenny Marcus kind of thing, The Mark Maron-ish type of question when I talk to old comedians.
No, but I do remember a vivid conversation with you at Stand Up New York. You were 19. I was like, you're 19 years old. Like, it was crazy. I think I was 30. So like, I just started and I was 30 and you're like 19. I'm like, this guy, by the time he's my age, will be amazing and I will be dead. That's that was like the thought process.
Well, we both had great careers.
You were just this kid who's nice. I'm like, how? I couldn't figure out like whose parents let him do this at 19. He should be in school. The whole thing. It was pretty amazing. Like you're the first. And I've met a couple kids since that have done that, but Yeah, it was nuts that you were a 19-year-old doing that.
I love to hear that. That's great. Yeah, I moved to New York after 2 years of college. I went to New York to study acting for 2 years, but I immediately walked into Stand Up New York, and I was 18 when I did, because I wanted to go on stage in New York by the time I was 18. That was my goal.
And you did it. I guess you did it.
And now I'm in a shed in Rockland County. But you've had a great career. I've had a great career. It's great to catch up with you. It's great to see you. I guess the only thing I did want to say is, I don't think I had Lenny on the Sirius XM show that much. And it was mainly because I didn't have a lot of comedians back in the Comedy Channel days, of course. But I don't know, because I'm listening to the podcast and watching you on Twitter, certainly over the last, 5 years as the world changed. And you're such a passionate and brilliant guy, and there's so much. I love your takes on everything. So if I didn't have you on enough, I feel bad. But now I produce the whole thing, and I get to talk to whoever I want when I want. So I'm excited to talk to you.
Hey, same here, man. I'm a huge fan. I'm so happy that 19-year-old kid made it big, and just your whole thing. The way you look at the world, I agree with it, and I'm just happy that you found a great part of this, the showbiz industry and all that. And you were always a talker. So I'm like, I could not think of a better platform for anyone than this.
Thank you very much, bud. It's great to see you and catch up. I'm super excited to talk to you. Now, since we have last seen each other, obviously a lot and has changed the world and in our lives, and you became a father and you married a lady, more importantly, a woman married Lenny Marcus.
I know, she's nuts. Gina, she's nuts. We have a little baby birdie, and she's great too. She's 4 now, and I couldn't be happier with those two for sure.
The way you talk about her on social media and your acting, certainly on the podcast with Leslie, is great. You're clearly obsessed in all the healthy ways with your daughter, as the way a dad should be. And it seems like you spend a lot of time with her, but right now we're talking, hope you don't mind my saying, you're out in LA. You're now Mr. Bi-Coastal. You're a big deal. So how is parenting going? She's 4, you said?
Yeah, she's 4. Well, this is the first really, really long trip that I've been on, but usually it's a couple of days and then I go back, and we get grandma to come help out, Gina's mom, and dad to come help out, and it works out. She likes it. She likes Leslie. She thinks Leslie's a hoot as well. And she sees her on, the buses. We did Supermarket Sweep, and Birdie's first big sightings in New York City were Leslie on the side of a bus, and she's pointing, there's Leslie. We didn't even notice. There she is.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, you've done so many great things in your career, and you've also been on a lot of these types of shows. You're a great guest, you're a great host, you're a great co-host, and now with Leslie, it's when I saw that you were doing this, and I think I saw it through kind of straight promotion myself. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. But of course, the question is, how does Lenny Marcus hook up with Leslie Jones? And I imagine it's because she does a lot of stand-up in New York, where you're a big deal working all the clubs.
Well, she now lives here in LA. It's actually a weird story. She was in New York doing Saturday Night Live, and when the season ends, she's not coming back to LA. She lives in New York now. She bought a place in New York, and then she would come down to the Comedy Cellar and do shows. She'd work on her act, and then this was over 3 years. So the first year she comes down there from Saturday Night Live, I see her. Who are you? And then I don't talk to her, because she's a big star. And then the next year we're all sitting at that Comedy Cellar table, as you know, and it's like, oh yeah, I know you. You're yeah. And then what's your story? I'm like, I'm dating this girl, blah, blah, blah. And then it was the next year I'm getting engaged, and she would keep up with the story until finally one in 2017 we were sitting there, and you know how it goes down there. Esty is the booker of the Comedy Cellar. We love the Yankees. There you go. We love the Yankees, and we watch all the games. All we do is talk Yankees baseball, and it's on behind us. And the only 3 people at that table at that moment were me, Esty, and Leslie. And Leslie looks at me, and I know what seats she can get. She's like, I can get good seats to a baseball game. Do you want to go with me to a game? And I'm thinking, you're going to invite me to a baseball. And I know those seats. They're the Lorne Michaels seats right behind the plate. So I'm like, I that would be my dream in life, to go to a baseball game with Leslie Jones in those seats. And so she goes, I'll call you. And I'm like, Okay, she goes, you put your number in my phone. She goes, you're Ryan Hamilton, right? I'm like, no. I'm like, no, that's the guy on stage. You can see him in that monitor. She goes, oh, it's Lenny. Lenny, yes. Lenny, yes. So I type it in. And I'm like, I'm never hearing from her. And like 2 days later, I got a text. You want to go to a baseball game? And I took Neil Potter because my wife had to work. And the rest is history. We had a blast. And it very slowly, I went and watched her act after that. And then I gave her, she came off stage and I thought I had a couple of lines for her. And you know how this, you don't want to give lines to a comic, And I was like, you want a couple of ideas? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, really? Okay. So I pull her over and I give her these lines and she goes around. She goes, come on, I got another spot around the corner. Let's do them. Like, let's do them. You don't want to think about it? She goes around the corner, puts them in the act. And I go like, let's say they're 10 lines. She goes like 9 for 10 and not good, like through the roof. I'm like, I can't do that for myself. So it's either right there or whatever. So she's like, okay. And this pattern happened. She's like, we'll go to another game, and so this happened a couple of times until finally these jokes are good. And then she's like, who are you? And then she starts asking around. She's like, all right. And then one day she just turned to me and said, she had a bunch of other stuff going on with Team Leslie. And she's like, hey, you want to open for me sometime? And then you can come watch my act as well. And then we just started working together. Now we've been working together 5 years and she takes me everywhere and I produce stuff for her and write stuff for her. And
that's awesome. That's so great. And hearing you guys together on the podcast, it's clear that you guys are really good friends and kind of anything goes. And there's not a hierarchy, even though she's a super famous comedian. She respects you and your career, and it's obvious. And as a person, I love it. I absolutely love it.
She does. But Pete, there is a hierarchy. It is the fun. Like you just said, like they won't spell. You said they spell my name wrong. Constant stuff, little stuff like that. If you want to call, other people would take this wrong way. I think it's the funniest thing. Like everything says Leslie Jones and Lenny Marcus. Like it's the funniest. What I mean is the best. I love that stuff.
What I mean is, generally speaking, and this isn't always true, but with comedians, you're at the table. And in your podcast on the conversation, there's not a hierarchy in conversation.
No.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, no, she's great like that.
Yeah. So, just real quick, obviously everybody knows who Leslie Jones is. Everybody knows about her time on SNL, but is she like, and now doing the podcast, which is awesome that you're doing that with her, but like, does she have a million things going on? You mentioned Team Leslie. She's doing movies and she's making like boatloads of money and she lives a rich life and has this nice house and like a bunch of people and entourage. Like, what's the deal? Who is she? What is she doing?
She has there's always like 10 projects in the works. There's like an animated project in the works. That's pretty close. But then, this business, there'll be a project that we work on forever and it just doesn't go for whatever reason. Like we just had a huge television project that we worked on for like 4 years. And I would have bet my life it's going. The script is great. The people we're working with were great. And just, they didn't buy it. So it's like, but all right, that one's gone. Let's go to the next one. We're working on a remake of the 1971 movie called Watermelon Man. I don't know if you know that movie, but we're going to remake that for Leslie. So I wrote a movie with her and we wrote this movie and Sony has said, just find a streamer to partner with and let's make it. And we're close. And we're getting a director. So that's where that process is on. So there's a movie pending. There's an animated show pending. We got the podcast going. She does a show called Our Flag Means Death with Taika. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Taika Waititi or somewhere.
Yep. I'm familiar with him. Yeah.
And it's on Hulu and it's a hit. And she's got a role. She's about to go to New Zealand and do that for a month for season 2. And she's just, I read more scripts than you could care to read, about different things. And I go, no, or I'll say, you should read this one. This is good. She just did a movie with like Ken Jeong. There was a small part in this Ken Jeong movie that's out now on Comedy Central.
Yeah, so she's like just got so much going on and you're basically there, almost a consigliere, a co-writer, a co-creative person constantly. That's awesome. Good for you, man. And she seems like, what is, you guys are very open and honest. I think that's part of the appeal of the podcast. It's her appeal. It's always been yours, to be honest. But I mean, you're not certainly afraid to weigh in on any divisive issues. You've got opinions on everything. I will say there's one thing I took issue with that you brought. I do want to get this out of the way.
Okay.
You talk about, you had a very funny story about going to the grocery store and, when did we start working there and becoming the cashier? And I agree with you. I was all the way there with you until you started complaining about having to bring a bag. And I got so triggered. I said, I'm going to confront Lenny with this because he's better than this. And I want to convert. I want you to change your mind and I want you to do it right now.
Well, let me just clarify this for you. I mean, some of it is a little bit of hyperbole. Okay. Just so you know the real story. Some of it's become, if I leave the house and I know I'm going to the grocery store, my wife has sent me there for items. I take the bag. Okay. If I'm walking down the street and I have to, I need the 5 items from the grocery store while it's right here. Let me walk in. How am I supposed to get home with those 5 items if I didn't take the bag?
You take the bottom of your shirt. You make a bag with it because you care. Because you care about other people and the planet.
Yeah. No, give me a paper bag. Wait, let me bring up something with you. Okay. Which is worse? If I go to the store and I need to get those 5 items, right? And they now make it's not a paper bag. It's like a 33-cent, a woven bag.
Yeah.
And I have to buy the woven bag.
Yeah.
And I get home and now I have 75 woven bags and I'm throwing out the woven bag. Isn't that worse than you giving me the paper bag for 5 cents and you recycle the paper bag, which I do all the time? Which is worse?
Oh, maybe so. It may be worse to keep buying. It's always worse to keep buying things that need to be produced, but the bag needs to be produced as well. I mean, the problem is that you're such a creative guy, and yet here you just give up. And it's like the woven bag can be made into any kind of article of clothing for your child. And there's all kinds of stuff you can do, obviously, with paper bag, like use it to write on and cut up, little notes to remind yourself. It just feels like you're lazy. No, the truth
in my act, I wish you would see my act now. I haven't acted out gun control. I'm trying to make a point. Like if I had a gun and I'd be just waving around everywhere, losing my mind, like you put it in the bag, get me a bag. I'm doing all this work. You're going to get me a bag. And so
that's great. I mean, I love your take on guns. You and Leslie are talking about it in an episode. I think I listened to 3 episodes. It's such a great podcast and show and fun show. Frankly, because you're there to bring out the best in her, and you always give your opinions. But apparently, you think there should be a gun regulation, very strict gun regulation, where if you buy a gun, like the third thing you do is with the gun after you register it is shoot yourself with it. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that
shoot
what you
yourself
think?
In the face. You can shoot guns only at but first shot has to be at your face.
Have you ever have you New York City Jew ever shot a gun?
No. You know what? I've only seen. I mean, other than on a cop.
Yeah.
I've only seen like 2 guns. And I remember. Can I tell you the story?
Yeah.
I went to the Kentucky Derby one year. My friends and I, like in my 20s, went on a cruise together, like a guy's going on a cruise, whatever. And we met these people from Kentucky and they're like, why don't you come down to Kentucky? Come down to the Derby. And we took this guy up on it. We went down, a bunch of guys went down there. And this guy took us to the Kentucky Derby the day of. He's like, I'm going to bring out Elvis. I'm like, what's Elvis? Apparently he had Elvis's limo. He bought this guy was rich. And he's like, he bought Elvis's limo. Not his first one, it was like Elvis 2. Elvis had 2 white limos, and this was the second one. So he's like, they got to see if it's working because it just sits in the back. So they hook up the car. I get in Elvis. We're all packed into this giant hybrid limo, kind of Elvis 2, whatever. And he's like, hold on, Lenny, I gotta just see some in the glove compartment. Like he's pulling out, I don't know what he was pulling out, but he opens the glove compartment, and there is like a Clint Eastwood, like whatever you call that, 357
38 special.
I turned white, absolutely white. I'm sitting next to this guy and I turned white. And he's like, Lenny, you're from New York City. You ain't never seen the gun before. I'm like, no, I have not. And it was just sitting in the glove compartment. Like,
what is your background growing up? I mean, you always struck me as one of those like quintessential New York City Jewish comedians. You identified that way, but and it seemed like you were really close to your family. But I guess I don't know quite how you grew up and what role religion or ethnicity played. So what was it, and how much are you handing that off to little Birdie?
Well, I'm not handing anything to Birdie. I was never like, I have questioned religion all the time, and then I get pigeonholed as a New York Jew, and I get it. I guess there's a whole zeitgeist of when I walk around that gives that off. So I don't think I can ever
have a bagel in your hand. Almost always.
Yeah, I'm not religious at all, and my parents have both passed away, and they would be pretty pissed about like that I don't practice anything anymore, but I just found it completely boring.
Yeah.
And I can question it all day long. So, but with that said, I grew up Jewish. I am Jewish. I'm not dissing it. I mean, if I got to pick religion, I'm Jewish. You know what I mean? I guess does that answer it? But I mean, growing up, my father escaped World War II, came to this country. It meant a lot to him. He married my mother, who's Jewish from Brooklyn. She was a bookworm. So I had a really odd childhood because I taught my father how to play sports rather than him teaching me how to play sports. And my mother didn't care about sports. She was like more very education based. So there is no reason I'm a comedian. They were great parents. I had a great childhood. Yeah. I just wanted to do it. We were all about funny in my house. My dad was very funny. And I like making him laugh, making them laugh. And I always thought it was I saw Seinfeld on TV and I was like, on the Tonight Show, I was like, that seems cool. So,
and then later on you did the Tonight Show yourself and Letterman and so many more things that you've done in your career. Were you always kind of interested in or engaged in current events or politics or social issues? Because when we met, when we were coming up, that wasn't such a huge thing. And I don't remember having those types of conversations with you particularly, but were you always kind of aware of stuff?
Nothing, not a thing.
Really?
And and I used to joke Barry Weintraub. I don't know if you know Barry.
Yeah, I love Barry.
Love Barry, right. And ask Barry. I used to tell him my whole thing was, they can remove half the newspaper. I have no interest. As long as if it lands on the front, I just turn right to the back. I don't care who's the president. I don't care who my senators are. I just feel my whole childhood, I could sum it up with, it doesn't matter who's president. Nothing changes. It's just this one. It tilts a little to the right. It tilts a little to the left, whatever. I don't even know what that means. It's just the world keeps spinning. And then somewhere around Bush, the younger one, W. And I was like, all right, this is weird. He's not the brightest bulb, but I think we could do better. And then it kind of morphed into like when they elected Trump, I'm like, oh my God. And now my head is like, you ever see Homeland on the board? And she's got that crazy board. That's my head. I know every senator. I know I'm like, I don't even know how this happened. I cannot believe we elect people like this. Like it's so sad in a way and crazy that I feel like as a smart person, I need to get involved, at some points and say an opinion because it's a joke.
Well, not only that.
When you team up with Leslie, she's asking me a million questions like I'm the smartest person on the planet. And I'm like, well, I got to figure it out to answer her questions and also not sound like a complete moron because there's a Black experience that's happened and I've now heard all of it. And so now it's like I'm a completely different person when it comes to politics, for sure.
When it comes to race, what's your journey there? I mean, growing up in New York, you probably did. I don't know. Did you think much about it when there's one of everybody everywhere?
Yeah, no, that's the thing. My whole theory in life is I think every single person in the world needs to live in New York for a year and you wouldn't be a racist. There would be no more racism. You can't go down a subway and be a racist. You can't. You'll freak out. Your head will explode. And you'll realize if you live here for a year, like nobody's out to get you. They're just living lives just like you are. It's kind of so dumb, racism, and I always thought it was dumb. My father and I it wasn't a thing in my house. We I went to school, worked with the football team, like up in college, when I got out of there, and the race is never, I felt depressed all the time because of this. My whole family died in the Holocaust. So, I knew racism firsthand, and I still live in fear. They're coming again. My father's like, they could do it here too. They could happen again. I'm like, it's not going to happen again. If he was alive today, boy, I would have to apologize because, some of the stuff that's going on, it's scary.
What about specifically when it comes to the Black experience? Like, did you ever have a really close relationship with a person of color the way you do with Leslie? Because when you're working with and traveling with, granted, she's a celebrity, but, she still gets all kinds of criticism and hate, certainly on social media, mostly, I would imagine, not so much in real life. But what have you learned from being really, really close with her, albeit it's not, again, the quintessential Black experience because she is such a famous and recognizable person, but still, I'm sure, she wasn't always number one, and number two, I'm sure you notice or have learned a lot. Is that a good question?
Yeah, I think it's worse because she's not in a bubble. She's in a public sphere. So imagine she says anything or tweets anything or performs in any way, shape, or form. And the tweets that she gets and the comments, it is insane. It's so disgusting that people act like this. It's just, some of this, it's flat hate speech. It's really, look, I've been called some names, but one Jew comment or whatever, and there's nothing like the million that she had to take. You got to have thick skin. And she does the best she can.
Is anybody ever do anything in person that is public? I wouldn't want you to share anything.
No, there's never been any public. So I think because people who don't want to see her perform won't see her perform.
Right.
That's good.
Right.
But she kind of welcomes it. She's like, she wants to hear from people who don't like her and ask why, and she's open to that. I find that amazing, but I also find it dangerous. I hope this, it's weird.
Has being around her and working with her increased your own sensitivity? I feel like that's inevitable.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Not only as a Black person, as a Black woman. You see life a lot more through her eyes, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's awful. It's frightening and awful. And there are times where I just don't know what to say. What can you say?
As a result of your evolution and enlightenment and working with her and just being this well-known, well-respected comedian who has been in the game for a long time, I really want to know what you think has changed in comedy or even in entertainment, the conversation about political correctness and everything that's happened in this country over the past few years. How much has comedy changed as a result of the country becoming more divisive?
Oh man, that's a great question. And I see it firsthand. And I think it depends when you grew up, if it's funny, you talked about, you had that show on Sirius and it was a comedy, and my first album, you had me in one day. I don't know if you remember this. You had me in one day and you tried to play this clip from the album, but the album was recorded in a way that you couldn't play it. It wouldn't play. And I always remember that. So for the rest of it, I was like, it needs to play on the radio. It has to be able to play. So, but when I recorded, now I look back at that CD and everything is politically incorrect. That you couldn't play one track from that now. It's all politically incorrect. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of it that's politically incorrect. Some stuff that people would just cringe, or some stuff is still will fly, but some stuff is cringy. And so that's 20 years ago.
Does that make you nostalgic, or do you think that's the way things should be?
I just think it's the way of the world. I wouldn't cancel myself over it. I was just joking, but it's you evolve as a comic to the times, or you die. If you get that stubborn, or you just go I don't want to pick on Nick DiPaolo, but he's picked a side, and that's his audience. You know, like you can go that way.
Jim Brewer has basically picked that side.
Yeah, exactly. So enjoy if that's the way you want. I don't. I want to have a full audience, but I do have opinions and I will make a point. And some people do get upset at even now, but I'm willing to say stuff that I believe in. Now, some people aren't. And the way comedy has changed is all these young kids that I see, they're so afraid to do that, to say, take any stand and anything. So you just hear these young guys, and that could be there because they're young too, but it's the same themes over and over. They can only talk about coming out or whatever their sexuality is and who they're having sex with. And there's very few drinking or they got drunk and this is what happened, or high and this is what happened. It's very few experiences that they can express because they're so politically correct and afraid to do it. You know, so you watch the kind of a repression of comedy and it's just the same thing over and over again. And the only thing that takes over, the only way what you see now is what comedians are out there. It's always like an Indian one who's like, here's my Indian experience. Yeah. Here's my Black experience. Here's my gay Black experience. Here's my gay Indian experience. Like, it's just, you have to have an ethnic based, personal story to get out there. You can't just, I can't make fun of the bags. You know what I mean? Look at you. You're shitting on me because I made fun of the bags. Like, because that's not politically correct. Like, come on, man. Can give me a chance. Like, let's laugh at it, Pete.
Well, no, I thought it was hilarious.
I'm just saying, like, can I have a bit? And it's like, I am doing the work now. Come on. I am doing the work now.
Yeah, you absolutely are. And I love hearing your take on so many things with Leslie. I mean, I pretty much, I think, agree with you on everything, including psychics and tarot card readers. But particularly both you and Leslie have very little tolerance, very little patience for what I call kind of anti-science people. And specifically, I'm talking about COVID and vaccination. And you were bringing up the whole controversy over basketball player Kyrie Irving and so on. But I mean, like, it would seem that the pandemic has changed everything. And I wonder how it's affected the way that you think about anything, or the way that, you know, what you've learned from it.
Oh my God. It's the way I mean, my whole career, I don't know, my comedy, everything that I agree. It's like, I don't see color, but I do see, I have this joke, like, I don't understand racism. Like, why would you hate somebody for the color of the skin when you can hate somebody for being a complete idiot? You know what I mean? So smart versus stupid to me is like, so I don't understand. If you think vaccinations are bad, even though you were vaccinated as a child, like, you just decided science, why even go to school? If you think the earth is flat, after all the schooling you went to for 12 years, then you just...
Well, school, of
why
course,
go to school?
Well, school's an indoctrination factory. They don't want to go to school anymore. They want to take over the schools, and they want to be able to teach what they want to teach. That's what's happening in communities, including mine, across the country.
It's insane.
They just want school to be a much different experience, and by different, you know what I mean. I mean, mainly, like, more than anything else, like kind of a white Christian kind of point of view.
It's scary. That's fascism. That's what happened in Nazi Germany. You know, I don't know how else to say it. You know, it's like, and I lived that experience through my dad, and it's very scary. And so I'm not saying you got to just. I mean, what was the matter with school? I mean, they taught pretty well. I mean, I don't remember taking you don't even know that stuff when you're a kid. I'm just making it through history class, you know, like,
I feel like if anything was wrong with the public school education I had, is that there wasn't enough truth. Like,
for sure,
enough
they
of
should
the
have
bad
taught the
stuff.
real history of the United States. Yes.
I mean, they want to teach this kind of version of history where where Jesus was born in Missouri.
Come on.
You know, I don't know. He's American. You know, he's a white. He created the greatest country on earth, and our rights are given to us by God. I'm like, I think our rights are given to us by the people we vote for, and they're taking them right now. So
yeah, I mean, Leslie talks about this all the time. Like, who is creating rights? who's creating the rights? Who's giving us the rights? You know what I mean? Like, who's in charge of the rights?
So,
like, we're all people. Give us, we should all have the same right.
I feel like because of some of what you're saying, and I feel like I know this about you, but maybe I don't. You're like a news junkie, a media junkie. Yeah.
I'm not a media junkie. I want to stay informed. You got me. You know what I mean? I just want to know. I do want to know the truth, and the way that both sides manipulate the truth. But facts are facts. And like when Kellyanne Conway, whatever, said alternative facts.
Alternative, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, now you've just opened up a Pandora's box of stupid for me.
Do you have other media outlets or individuals that you trust more than others? Do you turn on the cable news guys?
Yeah, I do. I mean, definitely. I will flip around just to see what people are saying. But I mean, I have my own. You have to form your own opinion, and you have to have a sense of right and wrong. And I think everybody has their own cable news network now running through their head, and willing to put up with this or willing to put up with that. And it's just, some of it is just, I can't believe people think like exactly what you're saying. If you think vaccinations are bad, I don't know what you're watching on TV to think that. I mean, there's science. It's science. Scientists. You don't believe in science. Okay.
Well, we all have our own version of science, apparently, as well.
I guess.
Yeah.
There's not an old, that's the funniest part. There's no alternative science.
Well, I respect those. I do respect, and I mean this, those who are super consistent. I know someone, extended family member, who doesn't do anything with their kids, like no chemicals in themselves, like no chemicals, no dyes, all that. I think that's crazy, but at least it's kind of across the board. You pointed out in the podcast, and Leslie, and this is the thing that irks me the most, is that you don't get to pick and choose. If you're not going to take a vaccination, then don't take Advil and don't eat that and don't get on a plane. Like, that's the thing that kind of inconsistency and hypocrisy is preposterous to say I'm only against vaccines, but meanwhile I'm drinking whiskey.
Yeah. Why do you take Advil? She's right. That one made me laugh. She's right. Why take Advil? You're getting sick. Just let it happen, man.
How often do you, Lenny Marcus, come up against someone who is, really disagreeable or, wants to argue? Anybody in your family, anybody in comedy? Does it ever happen at the clubs anymore?
Not in clubs. I mean, you see the people do argue, look, I refuse to argue politics with people. I refuse. I'm not going to argue politics. I'm just fascinated by why people think a certain way. Right. Like, why do you think that? For example, Leslie had for any issue, really. I mean, if it's so preposterous, but like the flat earth thing, like you brought up, Leslie had an assistant who was a flat earther. And I knew when she said it, like, there's a month left in this working relationship because, it's just going to bug Leslie because you're thinking a way that's so out there. I don't understand. I just want to know why do you think like that? Why? What happened? And and I think the explanation was it's like tied to some religious thing. And even that's crazy to me. So it's like, it just perpetuates crazy on top of crazy. So if you think the earth is flat, I got nothing for you. Nothing. I can't trust you with anything. A basketball in your hand.
Well, I think you're wrong about that. And far be it for me to give you and Leslie Jones advice for your podcast. But I think if you know somebody who thinks the earth is flat, please have them on at least for a few minutes.
It was going to happen. She got fired. We were going to have her, and I was begging the producers to get me her. Well, we'll get her Neil deGrasse Tyson. So we were holding on to get Neil deGrasse Tyson on, but she didn't make it. She didn't make it long enough.
Well, here's the thing. You don't need Neil.
Well, I mean, just to eloquently put it, I don't need Neil to just rip a flat, I got a million facts, but I mean, get me a scientist that can try and explain it, right? Somebody, if you can't, this guy's an astrophysicist. Can you please just understand? Maybe he can make you understand how ridiculous this is.
What do you do when, and you seem like you've always been this way, like the most emotional I ever saw you get, and this was consistent, was when we would play softball.
But yeah, I'm a crazy person.
But not in like if someone brought up something divisive. You'd be far less likely to have, a conflict there. Not that you were, that was a conflict with softball. That was funny to me, seeing you get so upset. But what do you do now? I mean, how often does it happen? When you say you don't argue politics, and by the way, is that across the board? Do you not argue with your wife? What's your practice, Lenny?
My practice?
Like, do you, when something happens, so I call it a practice because this is always something I've dealt with, just being impulsive and saying what I think, and I'm good at that, right. But that's right. Not helpful. What do you do?
I write stand-up comedy. I mean, the gun, I am so anti-gun. I'm like, how do I turn this into comedy? You know? And I just somehow have a note on my desk. That's how I express it. I just get it out. And then I can go back to once I express it that's how I do it, and then I go back to my normal life. I don't want to hate people, I want to, I try and stay, I like people, and I know a lot of people I don't agree politically with, but I like them as people, and it's tough. It's really hard sometimes. And sometimes I stick my head in the sand, and sometimes I've had to walk away from these people as friends now because it's so preposterous. And look, if you said, I'm going to vote for Trump again, I can't be your friend.
Right.
I just can't. I'm sorry.
Do you hate anybody?
No.
There's got to be some people, comedians, that you really have screwed.
Well, there's people I've worked with that I don't talk to anymore, as you know. But do I hate them? No, I don't hate them. I just feel people make choices, and I'm confident in myself that I'll be okay without you if I don't need you. You know what I mean? Even if I need you, I'm confident of walking away from anybody, that I will rest on my own talents. It will be okay. I will always land on my feet.
What is the deal breaker that will end your partnership with Leslie Jones? What divisive issue do you think you'd be like? Because she seems to go to the mediums and the tarot card readers, and you think that's nonsense.
Yeah, I think she thinks it's nonsense too. And if you watch her next hour, she will. I've written a bit with her about going to this medium. We talked about it on the show, but we've turned it into her opening bit in stand up.
Nothing. I'm sure an issue like that wouldn't.
No, I don't think so. I think we would just. Yeah. I don't see an issue that would bring up just the fact that we worked together too long. She would need a different voice, and I would need to do something else. That would be the only thing. Nothing. No fighting. We would never.
The thing about her that's kind of interesting hearing her on the podcast is she's part kind of playing the Leslie Jones that this kind of character who's very gregarious, but then she gets, for short moments, very serious and poignant and thoughtful. And I love that. I'd never heard her really like that. What kind of a person is she actually really like behind closed doors to the people that work with her and that work for her?
I think it's that. We had a chance to do. They were talking about her taking over for Ellen, and when we did two test shows
to host a daytime talk show,
show, and I told her, and everybody wants her to do it, and I'm the one, of course, that goes, nope, and she's like, what? And this is do I have to tell you the money on that, right?
No, but I couldn't agree more with you, because the show she's doing with you is way more real. It's really her.
That's right.
She could never
you answered your own question. Yeah. That's it.
I love the way that she lashes out at people that really did very little harm. But I agree, she's channeling the anger of this doorman who doesn't remember your daughter's name. I love that kind of stuff. And I don't think that's the kind of thing that would fly, during the day, but it's so real and so funny and great. Cause she's not, really going to go tell someone to whatever, but that's the bit, that's the character, I think.
No, what's funny about that is it's way more real than you think. If she was with us, she would yell at that guy. Her name is Birdie.
The background,
it would be a scene. It would be a scene. And I'm like, please do not come to my building. You know what I mean?
Lenny's daughter is 4, and the doorman at the building was there when Lenny and his wife brought his daughter home. and he still can't get her name right. And he told this story, and Leslie just goes crazy. It was really funny, kind of in a way as a defense of you too. I just love that. But yeah, no, I mean, she's so tell me, before I let you go, I've rubbed up against and worked with and around a lot of super famous people, as you have been with Leslie for years now. And so there's just a million stories. I mean, you could do the podcast. You could just do a podcast telling a thing that happened when you guys were on the road, or something that she did. And some of you do touch on that, and it's really great. But give us a story about working with her where either a fan or a moment or a nice thing she did. I'll keep naming them until you get one in your head, or something that you experienced working with her. Did she ever mouth off to an executive? You ever see that? That's what I like with most powerful people.
Yeah, and I can't talk about that.
Oh, yeah, of course you can't. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I said this yesterday with her. There are times where my job is I open the window and she throws the money out the window. You know what I mean? Because we're not going to take it anymore from a lot of this. You know, she's very real. And if, you know, she's not going to play Hollywood sometimes when they want to play Hollywood. But, you know, she has those moments. But what I love about her is, like, so we're doing Supermarket Sweep, and she knows this lady, and we've had her on the show, every show we've done, from the Test Ellen to our current podcast. Her name is Jackie Norville. She's known as Brown Bag Lady here in LA. And Leslie knows about her through social media or whatever, and met her, ran into her at a spa. I think that's the story. Was going to a spa, this lady and her struck up a conversation at a spa, and the lady feeds all of LA. All the homeless in LA. She's taken them food, made a wrong turn one day, and then has started this whole thing, taking them food. So Leslie knows about her, gets the producers in. What are you doing with all the food from Supermarket Sweep when the supermarket goes away? They're like, well, we're going to give it to people. And they're like, I got the lady who will help you distribute this across, and gets her involved with us. We get her on Ellen. The Ellen people give her $10,000. We get her on, any promotion we can do with this lady. I mean, that's who Leslie is, just trying to help people a lot, that most people would be like, do whatever you want with the food, help, throw it in, people would throw it in the garbage, and Leslie will make something out of nothing.
It's a weird thing. That's a great story. It's a weird thing to promote a thing and talk about the thing. In this case, is your podcast, The Fuckery with Leslie Jones. And in this case, I'm interviewing my old friend Lenny Marcus, who's the co-host. And I'm excited to talk to you and to reconnect with you, because what I can tell listening to the podcast and the way that you talk about her is she's as lucky to have you as you are to have her, because Lenny Marcus has always been a guy that you trust, that is not going to try to stab you, that is rooting for you and has your best interests in mind. That's who you've always been. And it's just a true testament of someone's character that someone like her would want to link up with someone like you. I'm completely unsurprised by it. You're such a great guy. I'm so excited for you and your career working with her in this podcast. That's all I had to say. And I wanted to say that. So thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Pete. I mean, I've had a chance to work with a bunch of people, and some of them worked out and some of them didn't. And I've been asked a lot, but for some reason with her, I just get her in a lot of ways that maybe other people didn't. And I know what she, I just get her vibe, and I know she does a lot of stuff from the heart. So I like that stuff.
Well, you do too. And thank you very much, buddy. It's great catching up with you. I appreciate you joining me. And I hope to see you someday.
Don't be afraid to get a paper bag. It'll be okay. You'll be okay.
I'm going to cancel this interview. I just deleted it. It's deleted. All right, there he goes, Lenny Marcus, everybody. Hilarious comedian. Everybody loves Lenny in New York and beyond. At Lenny Marcus NYC. Check out The Fuckery with Leslie Jones. And that's all I have for you today. That's it. I can't believe it's over. I'm so sorry. Wow. Almost 2 hours, though. I hope you listen to all of it. I know many of you do, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you the most. That's right. Okay, well, I hope you're doing okay and being mindful and staying in the moment and being the change you want to see in the world. And Jon Carroll's going to sing us out as he always does. Buy this song. Go to joncarroll.org and buy it now.
You got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. right on